Welcome to the Louisville True Crimes Podcast. I'm your host, Adam C. Thomas, and each week we'll discuss a true crime from in or around the Louisville or Kentuckiana areas. I grew up in Louisville and have spent my entire life here. Only through research for the show have I become aware of how many dark and heinous crimes have been committed in Louisville. I have found quite a few cases, some famous and others not so much, that any true crime lover is really going to love. But first, I'd like to address the wonderful people who made this entire podcast possible. The Louisville Free Public Library has been an invaluable resource in my research for this show. So many of these cases have been famous locally, however, most didn't garner national attention. As such, most of my research was done through back issues of the Courier-Journal. Through the library's archive of microfilm at the main branch downtown, to the free online access to research materials, including digitized archives of issues of the Courier-Journal dating as far back as the 19th century, this show would not have been possible without them. Libraries offer more services than you could imagine, offering a world of information right at your fingertips. They help communities and families and do so much more than just lend books. Libraries are some of the greatest resources each community can have, so please, if you can, support them with a donation at www.lfplfoundation.org, or simply by visiting your local branch and taking part in the many services and events they offer for every age imaginable. Newspapers are also an important and integral part of society. They are often underfunded and struggle to make ends meet, even with support from their sponsors. Support from the people in the community is what helps a paper thrive. Subscriptions and purchases help them maintain a standard of quality and integrity that might not otherwise be possible. Subscribing to a newspaper is a low-cost, high-return way to help ensure the news stays fair, balanced, and available to practically anyone who needs or wants to stay on top of local stories. This week we're going to discuss the Valley Drive-In murders. So let's dig in. It was the summer of 1973. Louisville was just a year shy of being rocked by a series of devastating tornadoes. Punch, a baby elephant, has just been born at the Louisville Zoo. Secretariat is making history at the Kentucky Derby. The Exorcist is released in theaters and drive-ins, scaring the Jesus out of moviegoers nationwide. The drive-in had become an American institution. Families would pile into their big, woody station wagons and pay by the carloads to see the latest movies on a huge screen in the middle of a field, in tinny, weather-beaten speakers. In their heyday, drive-ins were known for many things. Star-crossed teenagers getting up to what hormone-addled brains can come up with. Families bringing coolers, lawn chairs, and a pantry's worth of snacks to avoid paying the higher-than-necessary concession stand prices. Arcades lined the inside of narrow concrete buildings, attempting to maintain the attention of the children too small to watch the more mature movies their parents had come to see once the kiddie movies had finished playing earlier in the night. What happened next was beyond the imagination of even the most creative film fanatic. Rita Joan Robbins was working at the Valley Drive-In on Southern Dixie Highway, near where the LG&E plant currently sits. She was a high school student on summer break and likely worked there to earn money to do what teenagers in the 70s did with their cash back then. The weather was balmy, but not so much unbearable. It was a Sunday night, and Rita had taken her position at the ticket booth. She took cash and sold tickets and tried to maintain her attention as her boss, Lucille Hornsby, left for a moment to get something from her home not far from the drive-in. On her way out, Lucille told Rita that she would be right back. Lucille also noticed a car at the end of the drive, headlights beaming into the ticket booth, but thought nothing of it. As soon as Lucille left, the concession stand worker, John Southern, brought Rita a 7-Up. This was the last time anyone from the drive-in saw Rita alive. About 10 minutes later, Lucille returned, but Rita was missing. She looked inside the booth, and the 7-Up that John had just brought her was still sitting on the counter, the summer heat causing the can to sweat like it owed somebody money. Lucille checked the cash drawer. Empty. It was noted by other workers at the drive-in that a car was parking at the end of the drive for several nights. It would park at the end of the lane, its bright lights shining into the ticket booth so Rita, or whoever was unlucky enough to be working the ticket booth, would be blinded and oblivious as to the details of the car or its driver. The driver would do this for a short time, then speed off into the night. Rita's parents, Joan and Reed, called the police immediately. Initially, the police assumed Rita had simply run away. However, the fact that her purse and other personal effects were left behind in the booth, as well as her father's car had been left at the parking lot, cast doubt onto this theory almost immediately. Further, the police interviewed both of Rita's parents and were convinced now more than ever of foul play. Reed and Joan both confirmed Rita was a happy girl with little to no issues at home. She was a model daughter and had no reason, to their knowledge, of wanting to run away. On June 4th, police began searching for Rita. They searched on foot, by air, and with every means available to them, but came up empty-handed despite their best efforts. They searched the entirety of southeastern Jefferson County, but as of June 13th, Rita had still not been heard from by her parents, her friends, or the police. In the meantime, Lucille had hired a replacement to work Rita's former position. Ronald Shumaker was a soldier stationed at Fort Knox. He was working the ticket booth to make ends meet while on deployment. Ronald had also voiced concern about a vehicle parking at the end of the drive, shining bright lights into the ticket booth, obscuring his vision over the course of several nights. Much to the surprise of Lucille and everyone else that worked at the drive-in, Ronald disappeared in much the same fashion as Rita. After a cursory investigation, police initially declared Shumaker a runaway as well. They discovered he had been having marital problems. However, his wife stated that he was not the type to run from his problems. That was not the type of thing Shumaker would do. One of the investigators had developed a theory that this could have been a joint venture between Rita and Ronald. A hole was immediately punched in this theory when it was discovered that Shumaker had made plans to attend U of L Law School after his honorable discharge, scheduled only a few days after he disappeared. He had told all of his friends this, and it was no secret, which further deflated the theory that he had run away with Robbins. After closer investigation of the till and the ticket booth, police discovered there was $62 missing. However, Shumaker's car was still parked in the parking lot, exactly the same way as Rita's father's car the night of her disappearance. Co-workers of both Robbins and Shumaker made comments about how they had both appeared tense or uncomfortable in the nights leading up to their disappearances. One co-worker described Robbins as wearing a, quote, grim face, and that Shumaker appeared, quote, acting strange or sick in the nights before they went missing. After a few more days of searching, police received several credible tips leading them to two suspects, who we will discuss when we return after a word from our sponsors. Three days had passed since police had begun searching for the pair, and it wasn't long before they were both picked up for armed robbery and disorderly conduct at an unnamed business on Dixie Highway. On June 20th, Danny Lee Tetrick and James Sefcheck were named as suspects in the case. Sefcheck was 19 years old. He didn't have much by way of a criminal record, however, Tetrick, the guy he palled around with, did. He was on parole at the time that Robbins and Shumaker had gone missing. 3 days had passed since police had begun searching for the pair, and it wasn't long before they were both picked up for armed robbery and disorderly conduct at an unnamed business on Dixie Highway. On the afternoon of July 9th, Tetrick and Sefcheck were being held on previous charges, and an anonymous caller left a tip about the two, calling Tetrick a son of a bitch. The caller told police where they could find the bodies in a ditch at the bottom of a hill on Weaver's Run Road. Police searched the area where the caller had pointed them, and there, at the bottom of the hill, they found the body of Ronald Shumaker, dead from 2 shotgun wounds and blunt force trauma to the head. A day after the body of Shumaker was found, a 15-year-old girl was brought in for questioning about the events of the night that Shumaker had gone missing. She had been with Tetrick and Sefcheck that night. Police questioned the teenager and were told of the group's plan to raise money for her brother's bail. Tetrick told the girl that he was going to borrow it from a friend. Tetrick drove to the ticket booth, and when Shumaker asked for their entrance money, he was instead greeted with the barrel of a shotgun. Tetrick demanded he get in the car. They cleaned out the till and took off into the night with Shumaker in tow. Turning down Weaver's Run Road and finally coming to a stop, they again pointed the shotgun at him. They demanded any money he had, then Tetrick shot him point blank with the shotgun. This wasn't enough to kill him, and as he was tumbling down the hill, Tetrick shot him again, this time hitting him in the legs. Still not enough, Tetrick traipsed down the hill in frustration and bludgeoned Shumaker to death. The day after the witness had made this confession, on July 12th, both Sefcheck and Tetrick were confronted with the story. Neither denied it. Tetrick had told police that he had planned to continuously rob and murder ticket booth operators to make money. After they both confessed, Tetrick also claimed Sefcheck had tried to rape Robbins while she was in the car. It wasn't long before Sefcheck emerged from the vehicle shouting, Kill her! At Tetrick, at which point Tetrick stabbed Robbins to death. They dumped her body in the hidden area, and fearing the blood on the vehicle would lead to their arrest, took the time to wash the car at a car wash on nearby Dixie Highway. Danny Lee Tetrick and James Sefcheck were both convicted of murder on April 1st, 1974. Both men were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. They are both currently still inmates in the Kentucky penitentiary system. Neither Sefcheck nor Tetrick will ever be eligible for parole. Tetrick did exhibit a measure of remorse through it all. When police pressed him for more information about Robin's whereabouts, he gave the police information leading to her body, claiming it bothered him that her parents did not know where her body was, and that he thought they deserved to give their daughter a proper burial. Thank you so much for listening to the show. This show was produced and hosted by me, Adam C. Thomas. The show is engineered and recorded by Matthew Davis with Hipfire Media, who can also be found across all social media platforms. And you can also follow us across social media. We're on Facebook as the Louisville True Crimes Podcast. We're on Instagram at ltcpod. And we're on Patreon at www.patreon.com/Louisville True Crimes. Or you can always visit my website at www.adamcthomas.com. And don't forget, please consider a donation to the Louisville Free Public Library Foundation at www.lfplfoundation.org. As I said at the top, this show would literally not be possible without them. Go out and show them some love, and we'll be back soon with more Louisville True Crimes.